The wind off the Bitterroot Range came down hard that night, the kind of cold that does not howl but waits. It pressed against the windows of a little roadside chapel, 40 miles back where Garrett Holloway had stopped earlier to ask God for one more mile. It pressed against the dead engine of his 1998 Ford F-150 abandoned now under a foot of fresh snow at mile marker 12. And it pressed against the body of May Holloway as she finally went down face first into a drift, her gloved fingers reaching one last time for a door she would never reach on her own. Garrett caught the back of her coat too late. The fabric slipped through his arthritic fingers and his wife of 52 years hit the frozen ground with a soft, awful sound that he would carry with him for whatever time he had left in this world. Above them, a neon sign buzzed in the dark, the Wolf's Den, and below that sign in red letters that the wind had not yet smothered with ice, the words Hell's Angels Pine Creek Chapter. Garrett did not care. He had walked through worse doorways in his life. He had crawled across the burning sand of Kuwait in 1991 with his brother's blood on his hands. He had walked into a hospital room 6 months ago and heard a doctor tell his wife she had 90 days. He had walked away from his only son 7 years ago over a fight that should never have happened. He had walked 12 miles tonight with a dying woman on his back. He could walk to that door. He dragged himself to his knees beside her. His hands shook so badly he could barely cradle her face. Her lips had turned a shade of blue he had seen exactly once before on the faces of boys who did not come home from the desert. "May," he whispered. "May, baby. Stay with me. Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Snow fell into her open mouth. Garrett looked up at that neon sign, and for the first time in 78 years, he did not know what to do. So he did what a soldier does when the orders are gone, and the radio is dead, and there is nothing left but a wife who is dying and a door that might not open. He stood up. He pulled himself to his full height, all 5 feet and 8 inches of bent back and bad knees, and a body that had given more than it ever should have. He reached into the inside of his coat. He took out the small leather case he had carried for over 30 years. He opened it. The silver star caught up the light of that neon sign and threw it back red. He laid the case open on the snow in front of the door. He took off his Gulf War veteran's cap. He laid that down beside the metal. Then he raised his fist and he pounded on that door with everything an old man had left. Inside, the music stopped. The laughter died. Someone shouted something Garrett could not make out. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing but the wind and the chatter of May's teeth. Then the door swung open and 20 men in leather stood in the doorway looking down at him. The biggest of them stepped forward, a mountain of a man with a silver beard braided down to his chest, in a face that had been carved by years no easy man ever survives. Roy Brennan, 52 years old, 6'4", 260 pounds, the patch on his chest reading President. The men in the room called him Tank. The world that watched him from a distance called him worse. Tank looked down. He saw the old man on his knees. He saw the woman in the snow. He saw the metal lying open on the ice. And something in his face moved. Garrett did not beg. He did not cry. He looked up into the eyes of a man who could have killed him with one hand, and he spoke in the voice of a sergeant first class who had walked through the burning sand and come back the long way. "My name is Garrett Holloway," he said. "United States Army, retired. I served 2 tours overseas, Desert Storm, 91. My wife is dying of cancer. We have walked 12 miles tonight. I am asking you, one soldier to another, if you ever were one, do not let her die in your doorway." Behind Tank, the room held its breath. A younger biker with a scar that ran from his ear to his jaw crossed his arms. His patch read, "Sergeant at Arms." His name was Wade Calloway, 35 years old, and the brothers called him Razor. He spoke low and hard. "Tank, we don't know these people. Could be a setup. Diablos have been pushing all month." Another voice came from behind him, calmer, slower. A lean man with a Navy anchor inked on the back of his hand. Sam Mitchell, 50 vice president, the brothers called him Padre. "Does that look like a setup to you, brother?" Tank still had not spoken. His eyes had not left the metal on the snow. Then he moved. In 3 strides, he was on his knees beside May Holloway, and his huge hands were on her throat, feeling for a pulse on her forehead, on her eyelids. He moved with a precision that did not belong to a man who looked like him. He moved like a man who had once been trained to keep boys alive when their bodies wanted to quit. "She's hypothermic," he said. His voice had changed. It was sharp now, clipped. The voice of command. Core temperature is dropping. We need her inside. We need her warm. We need her dry. Padre, clear the couch by the fire. Wrench every blanket we have. Diesel, warm water, not hot, lukewarm. Now. The brothers moved like a unit. The man who had been Tank a moment ago was someone else now. And Garrett Holloway, who had spent half his life around soldiers, knew what he was looking at. Tank slid his arms under May and lifted her as if she weighed nothing at all. He looked down at Garrett, still on his knees in the snow. Can you walk, old man? Garrett's jaw set. He picked up the medal. He picked up his cap. I carried her 2 miles, he said. I can make 20 more feet. Something passed across Tank's face. Recognition, respect. The look one soldier gives another across years and wars. Then follow me. The heat hit Garrett like a wall when he stepped through the door. After hours in the wind, it felt like stepping out of one life into another. He stumbled. A hand caught his elbow. He looked up and saw the young biker they called Diesel, 28 years old, all tattoos and beard, and worried eyes holding him up. I got you, sir, Diesel said. Garrett blinked. He had not been called sir in a long time. The clubhouse was not what he had expected. He had expected a place of darkness. He found a place of fire. There was a long bar at one end and a pool table in the middle, and motorcycle parts on the walls. Yes, but there were also framed photographs everywhere. Children, dogs, weddings, funerals. A whole life lived by men the world had decided were not worth knowing. Tank laid May on the couch closest to the fireplace, as gently as a man would lay a sleeping child. 2 brothers moved in around her with blankets. Wrench appeared with hot water bottles and tucked them along her sides. Tank's hands moved over her with the steady authority of a man who had done this 100 times before. Get her boots off, he said. Slow. Do not rub the skin. You'll cause more damage. Padre looked up at him sideways. Since when are you a doctor, brother? Tank did not look up. 3 tours in Iraq, combat medic, army. You don't forget. Padre's eyebrows lifted, but he said nothing. A man's past in this room was his to share. Tank had just shared it. Garrett sank into this chair beside his wife. His legs were finally finished. Someone pressed a mug of coffee into his hands and he looked up and saw Diesel again. And behind Diesel, the rest of them, 20 hard men in a half circle around a dying woman. And for the first time since the truck had gone silent 12 miles back, Garrett Holloway felt something other than terror. Thank you, he said. His voice cracked. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Tank said. He stood wiping his hands on his jeans. She is not out of it. Tell me what happened. Why are you out on that road in the dead of winter? Garrett swallowed the coffee. It burned all the way down. It tasted like the best thing he had ever drunk. Transmission went out, he said. 12 miles east, no cell signal, no traffic. We tried to wait an hour, then we tried to walk. 12 miles, Diesel said softly. In this. We had to. Razor pushed off the wall. Nobody had to do anything. You could have stayed with the truck, waited for somebody to come by. Garrett looked up at the younger man, and his eyes were steady and tired and not afraid. No, he said. We could not. The room went quiet again. Tank crossed his arms. Why not? Garrett looked at his wife. Her color was coming back slowly. Her breathing was steadier. He could see the way the months had hollowed her out, the way her wedding ring slid on a finger it had once fit perfectly. He could see the woman he had loved for 52 years drifting just past his fingertips, and he knew that if he opened his mouth to say it out loud, something in him would break that had not broken yet. He said it anyway. Because my wife is dying, he said. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 3 months. He paused. That was 2 months ago. The fire popped. No one spoke. We are trying to get to a town called Silver Ridge, about 95 miles west of here. Our son lives there. We have not seen him in 7 years. Padre lowered his eyes. Diesel looked at the floor. Even Razor in the back uncrossed his arms. 7 years, Tank said. 7 years. What happened? Garrett's hands tightened around the mug. Our boy got divorced, he said. We took his wife's side. We should have listened to him. By the time we figured out we were wrong, he had moved. Changed his number. Stopped opening our letters. He drew a long breath. I have written him every month for 7 years. None of them ever came back. None of them were ever answered. Does he know you're coming? No. Tank stared into the fire. So he might not open the door. Garrett looked at his wife. She was sleeping now, finally her chest rising and falling under the layers of wool. My wife has weeks, maybe days, he said. She has never met our grandson. His name is Owen. He is 4 years old. She has never held him. She has never heard him laugh. She has never said his name out loud while she was holding him. His voice broke once all the way through. He did not try to fix it. And that is the only thing in this world she has left to want. So we are going to that door. And if he opens it, then God is kind. And if he does not, then she will die knowing we tried. The clubhouse was silent for a long moment. Then Tank Brennan picked up a chair, set it down in front of Garrett Holloway, and sat in it. The two of them, the old soldier and the big man with the silver beard, faced each other across 3 feet of warm air. Mr. Holloway, Tank said, tell me about the desert. Garrett blinked. Why? Because I have read about it in books. I have never sat across from a man who walked out of it. Garrett's eyes went somewhere else then, somewhere far away, somewhere very hot. It was 110 in the shade, he said quietly. We did not have water for 2 days. The tanks came across the dunes at night and they kept coming. We held the line for 4 days. I went in with 192 men in my company. I came out with 53. My little brother went in with me. He stopped. He did not finish. Tank did not press him. He only nodded slowly the way one man nods at another when no more words are needed. You walked 12 miles tonight, Tank said. On those legs, in this weather, with your wife on your back. Only the last 2 on my back. Tank almost smiled. You are a hard old man, Garrett Holloway. I am a desperate one. In the corner, Razor watched the 2 of them, his jaw tight, his arms crossed again. He had not said another word. A little before midnight, while May slept on the couch and the brothers moved around the room talking in low voices, Wrench and Diesel came back through the front door with snow on their shoulders and a small canvas bag in Wrench's hand. They had ridden out at Tank's order to find the abandoned fort and bring back whatever was inside. Wrench held up the bag. Found her medicine in the glove box, he said. Got photographs, got a folder of letters, got a Bible, got a wedding album. We got what looked like everything that mattered. He set the bag down at Garrett's feet. The old man looked down at it and his eyes filled. He did not let the tears fall. He had not let them fall yet, and he was not going to start now. Thank you, he said. He looked up at the 2 younger men. You did not have to. We know we didn't, Diesel said. Boss said go. We went. Wrench knelt down. He pulled out a pill bottle and handed it to Tank. Tank read the label, nodded once, and put it on the table beside May. This is for the heart, Tank said quietly, not the cancer. There's nothing in here for the cancer. There is nothing they could give her for the cancer anymore, Garrett said. She stopped chemotherapy 3 weeks ago. Tank looked at him. Stopped. Garrett nodded. He had not meant to say this part out loud, but the room was warm and he was tired, and these men had pulled his wife out of the snow, and he found that there were some things you could not keep inside anymore. 6 weeks ago, the oncologist told her there was one more round they could try, he said. Said it might buy her 6 months, but it would put her in a bed. It would put her on tubes. It would take whatever strength she had left and burn it. His voice was very quiet. She came home. She sat at the kitchen table. She said, Garrett, I do not want 6 months in a hospital bed. I want 2 months of being able to stand up. I want to find our son. I want to hold our grandson once before I go. He closed his eyes. I begged her, he said. I begged her to take the chemotherapy. I told her 6 months was 6 months. I told her we could find Owen anytime. And she put her hand on top of mine and she said, Garrett, there is no any time anymore. There is only now. Tank looked at his wife sleeping on the couch. So she chose this, he said softly. She chose this, and I followed her, because I have followed her for 52 years, and I am not going to stop now. Outside, the wind shook the windows. Inside, no one moved. Garrett picked up the canvas bag of his life. He held it on his lap. He looked into the fire for a long time. May woke a little after 1 in the morning. She came back to the world slowly the way she had been doing for weeks now, surfacing through layers of pain and medicine and the deep tiredness of a body that was finishing what it had to finish. The first thing she saw was firelight. The second was Garrett's face. "Hello, beautiful," he whispered. He took her hand. "Garrett." Her voice was thin. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." She blinked. She looked around. She saw the leather jackets hanging by the door. She saw the patches. She saw the man with the silver beard standing by the fireplace watching her. She made a small sound of surprise. "Are those?" "Yes." "Hell's Angels?" "Yes." Tank stepped forward and saw her flinch and stopped exactly where he was. He raised both his hands a little slowly. He had done this with frightened civilians in Iraq. He had done it with frightened animals. He spoke softly. "Ma'am, I know what we look like. I am not going to hurt you. You collapsed outside our door. We have been warming you up." May looked at Garrett. He nodded. She looked back at Tank. She looked past the beard and the leather and the tattoos, and she looked into his eyes for a long moment, the way she had looked into Garrett's eyes the day she married him in a courthouse in Spokane a long time ago. She had always been good at looking at men. She had always been able to see what was underneath. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for opening your door." Something moved in Tank's face that had not moved in a long time. He did not let it stay there long. "Are you in pain? Chest pressure? Anything?" "No more than the usual." She tried to sit up and a small gasp escaped her and Garrett was beside her in an instant. "Easy, sweetheart. Easy." I'm all right." She squeezed his hand. "I just needed to see your face." He put his forehead against hers. He closed his eyes. They stayed that way for a long second. Two old people in a Hell's Angels clubhouse at 1 in the morning, and not a single man in that room looked away. After a long time, May turned her face to Tank. "What is your name?" she said. "Roy, ma'am, Roy Brennan. The brothers call me Tank." "Roy." She tried the name out the way old women do, as if she were tasting it. "Roy. That was my father's name." She smiled. "He was a hard man, too. He had soft hands like yours." Tank cleared his throat. "You have a son in Silver Ridge, ma'am. We've been hearing about him." "Bennett." "Bennett?" Her face changed the way the face of a mother always changes when she says her child's name. "Yes, Bennett. He's 45 now." 45. She turned her face into the pillow. "I have not held him in 7 years." Tank looked at Garrett. Garrett looked at the fire. "Ma'am," Tank said, "we are going to talk about that in the morning. Right now, I need you to sleep. You have been through a hell I would not wish on a young man, and you are not a young woman, and that body of yours needs every hour it can get." She closed her eyes. Her hand found Garrett's again. "Garrett, I'm here, May. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you will sleep too. Just for a little while. You have not slept in 3 days." He kissed the back of her hand. "I promise." He did not sleep. He sat in the chair beside the couch, and he held her hand while she breathed, and he watched her chest rise and fall, and he thought about all the nights of his life when he had watched her sleep, and thought, this is the best part, just to watch her breathe. Around 2 in the morning, Tank pulled up a chair on the other side of the couch and sat down across from him. He did not speak for a long time. Garrett did not speak either. The fire crackled. The wind beat against the windows. Then Tank spoke, quietly, just to Garrett. "Mr. Holloway." "Garrett. Garrett, I need to ask you something, and I need you to give me a straight answer." "All right. How are you? Not your wife. You." Garrett looked at him. The old man's face was gray under the firelight. There were hollows under his eyes that the warm room could not fill in. "I am tired," Garrett said. "That is not what I'm asking." Garrett was quiet. "I saw the way you came up that walk," Tank said. "I saw your color. I saw your hands. I have watched a lot of men try to outrun their bodies. You're outrunning yours. How long have you been outrunning it?" Garrett looked at his wife. He looked at the fire. He looked at his hands. 8 months, he said. Congestive heart failure. They want me on a list for a procedure. I told them I would think about it after May." Tank closed his eyes for a moment. "Does she know?" No, and she is not going to. Do you understand me? She is not going to. Garrett. She has carried enough for one life, Roy. She has carried me through 52 years. She has carried our boy. She has carried this cancer for 6 months without ever once complaining. She is not going to carry me too, not in the time she has left. Tank looked at the woman on the couch. And after, Garrett swallowed. After, he said quietly, I am not going to be far behind her. The doctor told me a year, maybe less. So this trip you are looking at, Roy, this is not a trip about getting May to her grandson. This is the last trip of two people. We are taking it together, the way we have taken everything together for 52 years. Tank did not speak for a long time. When he did, his voice was rough. My mother died while I was overseas, he said. Last thing I ever said to her was I told her she didn't understand my life. She had a stroke 8 months later. They got word to me 3 days after the funeral. He stopped. He stared into the fire. I have carried that for 15 years. I have not been to her grave. I do not know how to walk up to it. Garrett looked at him. The old man's eyes were soft. Roy, he said, when this is over, will you let an old soldier give you one piece of advice? Yes, sir. Go to that grave. Tank looked at the floor. Yes, sir. Around 3 in the morning, the brothers began to gather. Not all at once, one by one. Padre came in first and sat at the end of the couch. Then Wrench, then Diesel, then Spider, then half a dozen others. They sat in a loose half circle around May Holloway, and they did not say much. They drank coffee. They watched her breathe. Razor stood in the back the longest. He stood with his arms crossed and his jaw set. But after a while, even he came forward. He pulled up a stool. He sat at the edge of the circle. He did not speak. He looked at the old man holding the old woman's hand, and something behind his eyes worked at itself. A little before 4, Tank stood up. Brothers, he said quietly, we need to talk. They followed him to the back of the room by the bar where May could not hear. Padre, Wrench, Diesel, Razor, Spider, and 7 more. 15 men in all. Tank looked at each of them in turn. 95 miles to Silver Ridge, he said. Mountain passes. Weather's coming in hard. Wrench, what do we have? Wrench pulled out his phone. He had been checking it all night. Big system out of the Gulf of Alaska. Hits us around 6 tomorrow night. We've got maybe 18 hours of clean weather before that. After that, the passes close. Could be 3 days, could be a week. And if she's still here when the passes close. Wrench looked at the couch. He did not answer. Padre spoke. She doesn't have a week, brother. You saw her. I saw her. Diesel raised his hand a little the way a younger brother does in a room of older ones. Boss, are we talking about doing this? Tank looked at the floor, then he looked up. I am asking the table. Razor uncrossed his arms. Tank, he said, we don't owe these people. We help them. We pulled them in. We're feeding them. We're warming them. We did the right thing. But 95 miles in winter through Bitterroot passes for 2 old strangers, that is not a club run. That is a death wish for somebody. The Diablos have been pushing on our western line for a month. The minute we leave this clubhouse empty, they walk in. He was not being cruel. Garrett, sitting 20 feet away at his wife's side, could hear every word. Razor was not trying to hide. He was speaking like a man who carried something heavy that he could not put down. And I look at that woman over there, Razor went on, and I see my own grandmother. So do not tell me I don't care, Tank. Don't tell me that. I care. But I care about us too. I care about the brothers. Tank nodded slowly. You're not wrong, Wade. Then, you're not wrong about any of that. The math is bad, the weather is bad, the road is bad, the timing is bad. He looked across the room at the old man and the old woman. He looked at the canvas bag at Garrett's feet, full of letters that had never been answered. He looked at the Gulf War cap on the table. He looked at the silver star. But brothers, Tank said, I am going to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. I want you to think about the worst night of your life. The night you would give anything to go back to and fix. The thing you said to your father. The thing you didn't say to your mother. The day you walked out of somebody's life and never walked back in. We all have one. Every man in this room has one. His voice was very quiet now. I have mine. You know what mine is. I have told you. The room was still. That man over there, Tank said, has his, and his wife has hers, and tomorrow morning, when the sun comes up, they are going to get one chance, exactly one, to fix it before she dies. They walked 12 miles through the worst weather this valley has seen in 10 years to get that chance. They came to our door, brothers. Our door, not the sheriff's door, not a church's door, ours. He looked at Razor. I am not asking you to die for them, Wade. I am asking you to ride with me, because I am going whether the table votes yes or the table votes no. I am going. I am going because somewhere inside this old leather jacket, I am still the boy who didn't get to say goodbye to his mother. And tomorrow morning on that road, I get to do what I never got to do for her. Razor stared at him. His throat worked. Tank. Yeah. You really are going. Either way. Yes. Razor looked at the floor. Then I'm not letting you ride alone. He raised his hand. One by one around the circle hands came up. Padres, wrenches, diesels, spiders. Every hand in the room. 15 hands. Unanimous. Tank put his own hand on Razor's shoulder. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Then he turned and walked back across the clubhouse and knelt down in front of Garrett Holloway, who had heard every word. Mr. Holloway. Yes, son. At first light, you and your wife are getting in a support van that my brother Padre is going to drive. Behind that van, there are going to be 15 Harleys. We are going to take you 95 miles to a blue house on Maple Street in Silver Ridge, Montana. We are going to put you on your son's front porch before sundown tomorrow. Do you understand me? Garrett could not speak. He nodded. Tank looked at the woman on the couch. He spoke to her even though her eyes were closed. Ma'am, we are taking you home. A tear slid out from under May Holloway's closed eyelid and ran down into her gray hair, and Garrett, who had not let himself cry in front of another man in many years, sat in the warm light of that clubhouse and put his face in his hands. He did not weep loud. He wept the way old soldiers weep. Quiet, whole body, no sound. Tank put a hand on the back of the old man's neck and held it there for a long second. Then he stood up. Get him a blanket, he said quietly to Diesel. Let him hold his wife. The rest of you, bikes, now. I want every machine in this lot road ready by 5:30. Wrench check tires twice. Padre top off the van. Spider blankets, hot packs, every medical kit we have. We ride at first light. The brothers scattered. Garrett sat in the chair beside his wife. He took her hand in both of his. He bent down and put his lips to her forehead. May, he whispered. Did you hear them, May? Did you hear what they just said? She did not open her eyes, but she squeezed his hand. He kept his lips against her forehead, and the firelight moved on the walls. And somewhere out in the lot, a Harley turned over with that sound that men of a certain age know in the marrow of their bones, and outside the wind kept coming down off the mountain. Garrett Holloway closed his eyes. In the dark behind his closed eyes, he was 44 years old again, and he was walking out of the smoke and heat of Kuwait with his little brother Henry on his back. And Henry was already gone, and he had not known it yet. He saw the sand. He saw the sky going dark with oil fires. He saw Henry's face turned up toward him with a small scar on his left cheek that he had gotten falling out of a peach tree when he was 8. I am sorry, Henry, Garrett thought. I am so sorry I came home, and you did not. He opened his eyes. The fire was burning low. His wife was breathing. There were 15 Hell's Angels working on motorcycles in the snow outside. He did not know it yet, but in less than 24 hours on a mountain road covered in ice, an old woman he had loved for 52 years was going to look up at him from the floor of a van and tell him she had just seen his little brother Henry scar and all. But that was tomorrow. Tonight the door had opened. Tonight his wife was warm. Tonight, for the first time in 78 years, Garrett Holloway sat in the firelight of a Hells Angels clubhouse and understood that grace, when it comes for a man, does not always come the way he expected. Sometimes it comes wearing leather. Sometimes it comes with a beard and a patch in a name like Tank. Sometimes the door you have been pounding on your whole life opens at last, and the men on the other side of it do not look like angels at all. But they are. And in the kitchen at the back of the clubhouse, Padre Mitchell stood at the counter making sandwiches for the road and quietly weeping into a paper towel for reasons of his own. And by the door, Wade Calloway, the one they called Razor, stood looking out the window at the falling snow. His hand rested on the patch on his chest. His jaw was hard. He was thinking about his own father, a man he had not spoken to in 20 years, a man who had walked out of his mother's house when Wade was 7 years old and never come back. He was thinking about how the old man in the chair across the room had walked 12 miles tonight for his wife. He was thinking about how his own father had not walked 12 feet for his. Razor did not know yet that in less than 36 hours on the wrong side of a rock slide on Highway 12, this old man, Garrett Holloway, was going to drop to one knee beside him in the snow and become, for one impossible moment, the father Wade Calloway had never had. But that was tomorrow too. Tonight the wind kept blowing. Tonight 15 Harleys warmed up in the lot. And tonight in a small Montana clubhouse under a buzzing neon sign, a man who was dying without knowing his wife knew it, and a woman who was dying without knowing her husband was dying too, slept side by side on a couch by the fire, while the men the world had written off as outlaws moved quietly around them and made ready in the smallest hours of the morning to ride. The thunder, when it came, would be at dawn. The sun came up gray over the Bitterroot Range. It did not so much rise as bleed slowly into the sky, and the light it threw on the snow was the color of cold steel. By 6:30, Harley-Davidson sat in formation outside the Wolf's Den Chrome, dulled with frost engines, warming their riders standing in a loose half circle around the support van. Their breath came out in clouds and hung in the air like prayers no one had said out loud. Inside the van, May Holloway sat propped up in the passenger seat, wrapped in 3 wool blankets. Her hands curled around a thermos of broth Padre had put together at 5 in the morning. Garrett sat sideways in the second-row bench so he could keep one hand on her shoulder. In her lap was the canvas bag Wrench and Diesel had brought back from the truck. Photographs, letters, a wedding album, a small leather-bound Bible that had belonged to her mother. Tank Brennan walked the length of his line one last time. He stopped at each bike. He looked each man in the eye. He did not give a speech. The brothers had heard enough words last night. This morning was for moving. He came back to the lead position. He looked up at the sky. He looked at the road which ran west out of the valley and rose into the passes. He raised his fist. 15 engines kick it over at once, and the sound of them rolled down the empty highway like the opening of a great door. For the first 40 minutes, May watched the road through the windshield. She did not speak. Garrett could see by the small lines at the corners of her mouth that she was hurting, but she was not going to say so. She had not said so for 6 months. "May," he said softly, "I'm all right. I did not ask if you were all right." She turned her face slowly toward him. Her eyes had gotten very large in the last weeks as her face had gotten smaller. She looked like a girl again in some lights, like the girl he had married 52 years ago. "I am tired, Garrett. I am tired in a way I have never been tired before. But it is all right, because I am tired going toward our son, and that is a kind of tired I can carry." He took her hand. Padre behind the wheel kept his eyes on the road and pretended not to hear. 45 minutes into the run, May made a small sound. It was not loud. It was barely a breath. But Garrett had been listening to every breath she had taken for 6 months, and he heard the difference in it the way a sailor hears the change in a wind. "May." "Garrett." Her hand came up to her chest. "Garrett, something is—" He was up out of the seat. Padre's hand was already on the radio. Tank, we got a problem. Pull it up." Tank's voice came back instantly. Pull off now." Padre swung the van onto the shoulder. The bikes peeled out around them and stopped in a protective half circle. Tank was off his bike before the kickstand was down. He came through the side door of the van in 2 strides and was on one knee in front of May before Garrett had finished unbuckling. "Ma'am, look at me. Look at me right here." His big hand was on her wrist. He was counting. "Where is the pressure? Show me." She put her hand on her sternum, squeezing, like a fist. Left arm tingle. Yes. Jaw. A little. Tank's voice did not change. The voice of a man who has put his hand on 100 bleeding boys in 100 bad rooms. "Garrett, her pills, the orange bottle, not the white." "I have them." He shook one into Tank's palm. Tank brought it to May's mouth. "Under your tongue, ma'am. Do not chew. Let it go." She took it. Tank kept his fingers on her pulse. Garrett knelt on the other side and held her free hand. The whole world had narrowed to the inside of that van and the wet wool smell of the blankets and May's breath going in and out slower now. Slower. "Better," she whispered. "It's letting go." Tank closed his eyes for 1 second. Just one. Then he opened them again. "You scared the life out of me, ma'am." "I scared the life out of myself, son." He almost smiled. Outside the van, the brothers stood in the snow in a loose ring. None of them spoke. None of them moved. Diesel, the youngest, had his hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets and his eyes were wet. Razor stood a little apart, his arms crossed, watching the door of the van as if he were guarding it. Tank stepped out into the wind. He looked down the road. Then he looked back the way they had come. "How far to the nearest hospital?" he said. 30 miles back, Wrench said. "Maybe a little more." "In Silver Ridge. 50 ahead." Tank stared at the road. Padre stepped down out of the van. He came to Tank's side and spoke low. "Brother, we need to think about turning around." "I know. She'll be alive at a hospital." "I know Sam." They stood in the snow, two men with a problem that had no good answer. Behind them in the van, Garrett Holloway held his wife's hand and waited to be told what was going to happen to her. Tank turned around. He climbed back into the van. He crouched down at May's knees and looked up at her face. "May Holloway." "Yes, Roy. I have to ask you a question I have no right to ask, and I want you to take a long breath before you answer it." "All right. I can turn this convoy around right now. I can have you in a hospital bed in 40 minutes. They will work on you. They will get you stable. They will keep you alive longer than I can. And you will not see your son tomorrow. You may not see him at all." His voice was very quiet. "Or I can keep driving west. And every mile from here on, we are betting on a body that does not have many bets left in it. I am not the one who gets to make this call, ma'am. I will not make it for you. But I need you to make it now." May did not look at Garrett. She knew that if she looked at him, he would say, "Go to the hospital." He would say it because he loved her. He would say it because he wanted her here. She looked straight at Tank Brennan, 52 years old, the president of the Pine Creek chapter of the Hells Angels. "Roy," she said, "I have made my peace with God. I have made my peace with dying. I am not afraid of any of that. I am afraid of one thing in this world. I am afraid of Owen growing up and looking at a photograph and asking his father, why didn't I ever meet her? I am afraid of dying in a bed 30 miles from my son. You are not going to put me in a hospital. You are going to drive me to my boy." Tank's jaw worked. "Yes, ma'am." He stood up. He stepped back out into the snow. He looked at Padre. "We keep going." Padre nodded once. He did not argue. Tank looked at his brothers. "We keep going." We tightened the formation. We stopped for nothing short of a bone breaking. Wrench, the weather. Storms moved up. We've got maybe 10 clean hours now. After that, we are in it. Then we ride hard. The brothers were already mounting up. Garrett inside the van watched them through the window. He watched the way they moved, the way 15 hard men in leather climbed back onto their machines and made a wall of chrome and steel and engine noise around a dying woman they had not known existed 48 hours ago. He looked at his wife. He did not say what he was thinking, which was, "May, I do not know if you understand what these men are doing for us. I do not know if I understand it either." He only put his hand back on her shoulder and the convoy rolled. They were not 12 miles down the road when they saw the lights. A Montana State Patrol car sat sideways across the highway with both light bars going. Two officers stood beside it. One older gray under his hat, a thick belly. One younger jaw, still soft eyes hard. The convoy slowed. Tank raised his fist. The line came to a stop. Engines idled. The older officer walked forward. He looked at the line of Harleys. He looked at the patches on the chests. His eyes moved with the practiced contempt of a man who had spent 30 years dealing with men who looked like this. Well, well, he said. Hell's angels, what are you boys doing out on a morning like this? Passing through, officer, Tank said. Passing through to where? Silver Ridge. The older officer's eyebrows lifted. That's a long ride in this weather. What is the hurry? Personal business. The officer almost smiled. Personal business, he said. That's usually code in my line of work. His partner had circled around the back of the convoy. He was looking into faces, memorizing patches, putting his hand on the butt of his pistol when he thought nobody was watching. Inside the van, Garrett Holloway saw all of it. He had been seeing men like this in uniforms and out of them for 60 years. He knew exactly how this conversation was going to go if he sat in the van and let Tank do the talking. May, he said quietly, don't Garrett. I'm going to. Garrett, no, you're tired. He looked at her. He almost smiled. Honey, he said, in '91 I carried a man twice my weight across 2 miles of open desert under enemy fire at 110 degrees. I think I can get out of a van. He opened the door. Padre saw him in the side mirror and started to say something, and then stopped. Tank 20 feet up the road heard the door and turned. The two officers turned at the same time. Garrett Holloway stepped down from the van. He was a small man at 78, made smaller by the cold and the years, and a wife he had been losing by inches for 6 months. He had a stoop in his back that the Army would have written him up for in any other decade. His left knee did not bend right. His right hand shook a little when it was not closed around something. But he had the Gulf War veteran's cap on his head. He had the Silver Star case in his coat pocket. He had a voice that when he wanted it to still came out of a place that the United States Army had built into him a long time before either of those two officers had been born. He walked up the line of bikes. He walked past Tank. He walked right up to the older officer and stopped in front of him at the distance of 1 yard, and he came to a position of attention that his body had not assumed in years, and the body did not entirely cooperate, but it cooperated enough. Officers, he said, my name is Garrett Holloway, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, retired. He reached slowly into his inside pocket. The younger officer's hand twitched toward his holster, and the older officer stopped him with a small flick of 2 fingers without ever taking his eyes off Garrett. Garrett brought out his military ID. He held it up. I served 2 tours in Iraq and Kuwait. Operation Desert Storm, February of 1991, with the 24th Infantry Division, 3rd Battalion. I came home in '92. I have been a citizen of the state of Montana for 51 years. The older officer took the ID. He looked at it. Garrett did not stop. My wife is in that van. She is dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave her 3 months. That was 2 months ago. His voice did not break. His voice was the voice of a sergeant making a report. Our truck broke down 12 miles outside the town of Pine Creek last night. We walked the last 2 miles in the snow to the only doorway we could find. These men found us. They warmed us. They saved my wife's life. And now they are driving us 95 miles through a snowstorm to a town called Silver Ridge so that my wife can hold our 4-year-old grandson before she dies. We have not seen our son in 7 years. He does not know we are coming. We may be too late even if we get there. And so I am asking you, officer to officer, soldier to whoever you are you going to help us or are you going to stand in our way? He stopped. He did not lower his eyes. The older officer held the ID. He looked at it. He looked at the cap on Garrett's head. He looked at the row of motorcycles. He looked at the van. Desert Storm, he said quietly. Yes, sir. My daddy was in the Gulf, 1st Marine Division. Garrett did not answer for a second. 1st Marine Division was on the eastern flank, he said. We were west. They broke the line at Kuwait City. Your father was a brave man. The older officer looked down at the ID in his hand for a long second. Then he handed it back. He stepped to one side. Road's clear ahead about 30 miles, he said. His voice was rough now. Watch the ice on the switchbacks at marker 41. The east face has been freezing up since midnight. Yes, sir. You take your wife to your boy, Sergeant Holloway. I intend to, officer, thank you. Garrett turned. He walked back toward the van. He had to walk past the line of bikes to get there. As he passed Tank's machine, he did not look at Tank. He kept his eyes forward. But Tank looked at him as he passed, and Tank Brennan, who was 6'4" and built like the name they had given him, dropped his eyes the way a younger soldier drops his eyes when an older one walks by. Behind Garrett, the younger officer raised his hand very slowly in something that was almost a salute. Garrett climbed back into the van. He closed the door. He sat down. May looked at him. He took her hand. He could not speak for a moment. She squeezed his fingers. Garrett Holloway, she whispered. You old soldier. He stared straight ahead and breathed. The convoy moved. 25 miles later, they stopped at a place called Miller's Junction. The gas station was small and old, a single pump out front, a faded sign overhead. The attendant was a boy of 16 with a bad complexion and very large eyes. He stood in the doorway of the little office with his mouth open and watched 15 Harleys roll up to the pumps. Holy cow, he said quietly. Diesel got off his bike and walked over to him and grinned. First time seeing real ones, kid. Yeah. The boy looked past Diesel at the van where Padre was helping May step down to stretch her legs. Garrett stood beside her with his hand on the small of her back. She moved like a woman made of paper. Is that lady okay? The boy asked. Diesel's grin faded. No, son, she's not okay, but she's where she needs to be. The boy looked at Garrett. He looked at the cap. He looked at the way the old man was holding the old woman. He said very quietly, is that his wife? Yeah. Where are you taking them? To their son. The boy did not say anything for a long moment. Then he turned and went back into the office. He came back out with a paper cup of coffee and a small plastic-wrapped honey bun from the shelf behind the counter. He walked over to Garrett. He held them out. Sir, he said, on the house. Garrett looked at the boy. He looked at the coffee. He looked at the honey bun. Son, he said, what is your name? Cody. Cody, thank you. The boy looked down at his shoes. He shifted his weight. Then he looked back up. Sir, can I ask you a question? You can. Are you scared? Garrett held the coffee in one hand and the honey bun in the other, and he looked at this 16-year-old boy in a gas station in the middle of Montana with all the snow coming down out of the sky. Cody, he said, I have been scared for 7 years. I have been scared so long I forgot it was fear. I called it pride. I called it being right. I called it standing on principle. I called it a lot of things, but it was fear. I was afraid my son would not forgive me, so I waited. I waited too long. Now my wife is dying and I'm going to her boy with her, and we may be too late and we may not. But the answer is yes, son. I am scared. The trick is you keep going anyway. You hear me? You keep going anyway. The boy's eyes were wet. Yes, sir. Do not wait the way I waited, Cody. If you have somebody, if you have a father, if you have anyone you have not said something to, you go say it. You hear me? Yes, sir. Garrett nodded once. He looked at the boy a moment longer. Then he turned and walked May slowly back to the van. Diesel had stood 20 feet away the whole time and listened. He did not say a word. When Garrett had passed, he turned to the boy. Kid, he said, what's your dad do? He works the night shift up at the lumberyard. We don't talk much. He came back from his second deployment kind of broke. What branch? Marines. Diesel nodded. He pulled a small wooden cross out of his pocket on a leather cord and pressed it into the boy's hand. Friend of mine made these. He's not done making them yet, but I had one in my pocket. You give that to your dad tonight. You tell him a Hell's Angel said thank you for his service. You can do that." The boy looked down at the little cross. "Yes, sir. Don't call me sir, kid. I am not anybody's sir." He grinned and slapped the boy on the shoulder and walked back to his bike. Inside the gas station, the boy stood for a long time looking at the cross in his hand. They were 20 miles out of Silver Ridge when they came around the long curve at marker 63 and saw the road. There was no road. Where the highway had been, there was a wall of rock and broken timber and frozen mud 2 stories high and 100 feet across. A slide had come off the slope above, sometime in the night, maybe in the early morning, and it had taken the road with it. Tank killed his engine. The other bikes coasted in behind him. The van came up. Padre cut the wheel and stopped. Nobody spoke. Tank got off his bike slowly. He walked up to the foot of the slide. He looked up at it. He turned around and looked back at his men. He looked at the van. He took his helmet off. "Padre," he said quietly, "get him out here." Padre came around and opened Garrett's door. Garrett climbed down. He walked up the road with Tank slowly, his bad leg dragging just a little. He stood beside the big man and looked at the wall of stone. He did not say anything. Then he looked at Tank. "How long?" he said. "To clear it, hours, maybe a day with heavy equipment. We do not have heavy equipment." "Is there another road?" "No, sir, not in winter. This is the only pass." Garrett looked at the wall. He looked at the sky. The light was already starting to change. He could feel the weather coming. He had felt weather coming his whole life, in his knees and his back, in the place under his sternum where his heart was finishing. He turned, he walked back to the van. He opened the door. He looked at his wife. "May." "I know," she said. "I heard." Her face was very calm. "I am going to go look at the rocks," Garrett said. "Garrett, no. Garrett, you're sick." She had not used that word about him in 8 months. He had not used it about himself. He looked at her, and for 1 second they both knew that they both knew, and neither one said it. "I am going to look at the rocks, May." "All right." He walked back up this road. By the time he got there, Razor had pulled off his jacket and thrown it over the back of his bike. He had walked up to the nearest boulder, a thing the size of a kitchen stove, and he was bracing his shoulder against it. "We're moving it," he said. "Some of these are big, but some of them are not. We don't need to clear the road. We just need to clear 1 lane. Enough for the van." Diesel was already taking his jacket off too. Tank looked at Razor. "Wade, don't tank. Wade, this is going to take us hours. Then we better start now." He drove his shoulder into the stone and grunted and pushed. The rock did not move. Diesel came up on the other side of it. They pushed together. It moved an inch. Padre was next, then Wrench, then Spider, then everyone. Tank watched them for 1 second. Then he took his jacket off too and walked up the road. Garrett Holloway had been walking up behind him. "Mr. Holloway?" "Garrett." "Garrett, no. You sit in the van. You keep your wife company." "Tank," Garrett said. "I carried a man on my back from the breach at Wadi al-Batin to the staging area in 91. 9 miles. He was dead the last 6. I did not put him down, because if I put him down, I would never have picked him up again." "Garrett, I am not sitting in that van. Those men are killing themselves to move stones for my wife. I will lift what I can lift." Tank looked at the old man. "Garrett," he said, "your heart." "Yes, Roy, my heart. And the day I sit in a van while better men than me break their bodies for my wife is the day my heart is no good to me anyway." Tank closed his eyes for a second. Then he stepped aside. "Yes, sir." Garrett Holloway walked to the wall of rock. He picked up a stone the size of a watermelon. He carried it 10 feet to the side. He set it down. He went back. He picked up another. He carried it. He set it down. He went back. Razor saw him. He stopped pushing for 1 second and watched the old man. The others saw him. Diesel's eyes went a little wet. He turned away and bent his back into a boulder. For 2 hours they worked. The wind picked up. The sky over the mountains was going the color of slate. Wrench checked his phone twice and said nothing. The temperature dropped from 15 above zero to 5 above zero in an hour. Razor's hands were bleeding. The skin on his palms had torn open early, and he had ignored it, and now there was a slow red track running down his wrist, where the blood was coming through his sleeve. He did not stop. He picked up stones and threw them aside and went back for more, and his face had a set to it that the other brothers had seen before, but not very often and not for a long time. Padre's lip was split. He had slipped once and gone down hard on a stone and bitten through the inside of his cheek. He kept working. Diesel was crying without making any sound. The tears were freezing on his cheeks. He kept working. Garrett Holloway carried stone after stone. His face was the color of paper. His hands had stopped shaking. They had stopped because they were too tired to shake. He moved very slowly now. He moved like a man underwater. But he did not stop. In the van, May watched him through the windshield, and she pressed her hand against the glass. Padre, beside her in the driver's seat, watched her watch him. "Mrs. Holloway." "Yes." "You have a good man." "Yes, I do. He is killing himself out there." She did not turn her face away from the window. "Sam," she said, "he has been killing himself for me for 52 years. He is not going to stop now, and I am not going to stop him." Padre put his head down. He did not say anything. In the third hour, Garrett picked up a stone the size of a microwave oven. He bent his back to it. He lifted. His vision went white at the edges. His chest closed. He took 2 steps. His knees went. He went down hard on the snow with the stone half on top of him, and for a second he could not breathe at all, and he thought, all right, this is it. This is the place. All right. A pair of hands hit him. Strong hands. Younger hands. "Hey, hey, old man, hey." Wade Calloway, the one they called Razor, had thrown himself down on his knees in the snow beside Garrett and was rolling the stone off his chest. His own hands were leaving blood on Garrett's coat. "Look at me. Look at me. Are you breathing? Garrett, breathe." Garrett blinked up at the sky. The sky was very gray. The boy with the scar on his face was very close, looking down into his eyes. "I'm breathing, son, I'm breathing." Razor sat back on his heels. He kept one hand on Garrett's shoulder. "Tank," he called out. "Tank, get over here." "I'm all right," Garrett said. "Wade, I'm all right. Don't yell. Don't make May see." Razor stopped. He looked at the old man. The old man was lying on his back in the snow. His chest was rising and falling unevenly. His skin was the color of old paper, and he was worried about his wife seeing. Razor sat down beside him in the snow. He did not call Tank again. He just sat there for a minute. He put his hand on Garrett's shoulder and kept it there. The blood from his palm was leaving a print on the old man's coat. "You shouldn't be out here," Razor said quietly. "You shouldn't be carrying stones." "My wife is in that van," Garrett said. "I know. I have to move them, Wade. I have to move what I can move." "I know." Razor looked away. He looked up the wall of stone. He looked at his brothers working in the cold, their breath coming out in great clouds. He looked back at Garrett. "Sir," he said, "can I tell you something?" "Yes, son." "My father walked out on us when I was 7. Garrett did not move. He did not say anything. He just looked at the boy. "He was not a soldier," Razor said. "He was not a hero. He was not in any war. He was a roofer in Billings, Montana, who got tired of his life one Tuesday morning and got in his truck and drove away. He did not come back. He did not write a letter. He did not call on Christmas. He did not call on my mother's birthday. He did not call when I broke my arm in 8th grade. He did not call when I joined the Army. He did not call when I came home. I am 35 years old, sir, and I have not seen my father since I was 7 years old. Wade, I hate him. I have hated him every day for 28 years. I have hated him so much, I joined a club so I could have brothers because I did not have a father." Garrett looked at him. "And I am watching you carry stones with a sick heart for a woman you have loved for 52 years, sir. And I want to tell you something." His voice was very quiet. You are the father I always wanted. I do not know you. I met you yesterday, but you have shown me in about 18 hours what a man looks like. And I am 35 years old, sir, and I needed to see it. Garrett's eyes were full. He did not let the tears go. They sat there in his eyes. He reached up. He put his old, bloodied, shaking hand on the back of Razor's neck. Wade Calloway, he said. Yes, sir. I am sorry for your father. I am sorry he did not stay. I do not know what made him go. I am sure he had his reasons, and I am sure his reasons were not good enough. But I will tell you something, son. The fact that he did not stay does not say anything about you. You are the man you are because you decided to be. And the man I am looking at right now is a man any father in this world should be proud to call his. Razor's face did something it had not done in a long time. He bent forward over his knees in the snow and he cried. Not loud, not for very long, but fully, the way a man cries when something old finally lets go. Garrett kept his hand on the back of the boy's neck the whole time. After a minute, Razor sat up. He wiped his face with the back of his bloody hand. He looked at the old man. All right, he said. All right, son. Razor stood up. He reached down. He helped the old man up out of the snow. He kept his arm around Garrett's shoulders for a second longer than he had to, and then he stepped back. You sit down for 10 minutes, he said. That's an order from the only sergeant you've got out here. Garrett almost smiled. Yes, Sergeant. Razor turned and walked back to the wall of rock. He picked up a stone twice the size of his head and carried it 10 feet and threw it down. He picked up another. Tank had been watching from 20 feet away. He had heard most of it. He did not say anything to either of them. He just went back to the wall and put his shoulder into the next boulder. At 3 hours and 20 minutes, they had a lane wide enough for the van. Tank stood back and looked at it. Padre, he said, drive it through. Slow, the mirrors will scrape. Padre got behind the wheel. He eased the van forward. Metal scraped on stone on both sides. The van shuddered. Garrett, sitting beside May, now gripped her hand hard. The van came through. Behind it, 15 Harleys followed one at a time, single file through the lane the brothers had cut by hand. When the last one came through, Diesel let out a yell that bounced off the canyon walls. Spider whooped. Even Padre, the quiet one, the vice president who had not raised his voice all day, threw his head back and laughed. Tank did not laugh. He looked at his watch. He looked at the sky. Mount up, he called out. We have lost 3 hours. We do not have 3 hours to lose. The engines came back. The convoy rolled west. 15 miles later, May's hand went slack in Garrett's. He felt it go. It was such a small thing. It was the smallest thing in the world. The weight in her fingers, which was already very little, became no weight at all, and her head, which had been resting against the window, slid sideways against the back of the seat. May. He shook her shoulder. May. Honey. May. He put his hand on her cheek. Her cheek was cool. He put 2 fingers under her jaw. There was nothing there. Padre. His voice came out very small. He could not get it any louder. Padre. Padre looked in the mirror. Padre, pull over. Now. The van skidded. The bikes scattered. The convoy stopped in the middle of the mountain road, and Tank Brennan was off his machine and at the side door of the van before the wheels had finished turning. He yanked the door open. He saw May. He saw her color. He saw her chest not moving. Out. Out, Garrett. I need her flat. I need her on the ground. Garrett did not move. Razor was suddenly there. He reached past Tank gently and took Garrett by the shoulders. Sir, come with me right now. He lifted the old man out of the van. Tank scooped May out of the seat and laid her flat on a blanket Padre had thrown down on the snow. He knelt over her. His huge hands found the spot on her sternum. He locked his fingers together. He began. 1, 2, 3, 4. The brothers had made a circle around them. Nobody spoke. Diesel had his hands pressed to his mouth. Padre had stepped back to give Tank room and was standing with his head down, his lips moving in something that was not a prayer he knew the words to. Tank kept counting. 20, 25, 30. He bent down. He tilted her chin up. He sealed his mouth over hers and breathed. Garrett Holloway stood in the snow with Razor's arm around his shoulders, and he watched his wife of 52 years lying on a blanket on the side of a mountain road, and he could not breathe, and he could not speak, and he could not move. Then his knees went, and Razor went down with him, and the two of them knelt in the snow together, and Razor never took his arm away. "May," Garrett whispered. "May, baby, don't. Not now, not 5 miles from him." Tank kept going. 1, 2, 3, 4. His face was wet. The big man, the president, the medic, the silver-bearded mountain, who had not let anybody see him cry in 15 years, was sweating tears into the snow. "Come on, ma'am. You did not come this far to quit. Get back here. You hear me?" A minute and a half. 2 minutes. He bent. He breathed for her. He came back up. He kept counting. 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Razor was shaking against Garrett's shoulder. Diesel had turned his face all the way away. Wrench was on one knee with his hat off. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. "Damn it," Tank said. He said it quietly. He kept compressing. He kept his hands moving. "Damn it, May Holloway, you do not get to die on this road. Your boy is 5 miles away. Your grandson is 5 miles away. Get back here." 3 minutes. He did not stop. 3 minutes and 20 seconds. May Holloway gasped. It was the smallest sound. It was the sound a baby makes the first time it pulls air into a body that has never had air before. Her eyes flew open. She coughed once, twice. Her hand came up and grabbed the front of Tank's shirt. "That's it," Tank whispered. "That's it. Breathe. Just breathe." Garrett crawled across the snow to her on his hands and knees. He took her face in both his hands. "May, May, May." "Garrett." Her voice was thin. Her voice was a thread. "Garrett, I saw." "What? What did you see, honey?" She blinked up at him in the gray afternoon light on a mountain road in Montana, 5 miles from a blue house on Maple Street. "Garrett," she whispered, "I saw Henry." He went very still. "May, your brother, Garrett. I saw your brother. He had the scar, the one on his left cheek, from the peach tree. He had his desert utilities, the letters on his chest, H. Henry Holloway." Garrett could not move. He had never told her about the scar from the peach tree. He had never told her about the letters stenciled on the chest. He had never told her the name of his unit. He had never told anyone the things she was telling him. "May." "He said to tell you." Her voice was so small. "He said to tell you it was not your fault. He said you did everything a brother could do. He said it is time. He said it is time for you to lay it down." The old man bent his head over his wife in the snow, and the sound that came out of him was not a sound anyone in that road would ever forget. It was not a sob. It was the sound of more than 30 years of carrying something finally setting it down. Razor was still on his knees behind him. Tank was still on his knees beside her. Diesel had turned his face into Padre's shoulder. Padre had his hand on top of Diesel's head. The wind blew across the road. Garrett Holloway pressed his forehead to his wife's forehead, and his old body shook, and far down the road, 5 miles west of where they knelt, a 4-year-old boy named Owen was sitting on the floor of a blue house pushing a wooden truck across a rug, and he did not know yet that his grandmother was alive again, and that she was coming for him, and that she had crossed more than 90 miles of cold mountain to take him in her arms. But she was coming. And the convoy, after a long, long while, mounted up one more time, and the engine started. And under a sky that was beginning at last to fill with snow, they rolled the last 5 miles into Silver Ridge, Montana. The first houses of Silver Ridge came up out of the snow like something out of a dream a man would have on his last day of life. Small, white, quiet, smoke rising from chimneys. Christmas lights still strung along a few of the porches even though Christmas was a month gone. The kind of town a man builds when he has been hurt enough to want to live somewhere that does not hurt him anymore. Garrett Holloway sat in the back of the van with his wife's hand in both of his, and he looked through the window at the town his son had run to 7 years ago, and he understood for the first time why Bennett had chosen it. Bennett had always been a boy who liked quiet. Bennett had always been a boy who needed soft places after hard ones. Garrett had given his son too many hard ones. He kissed the back of May's hand. She had been awake since they came down out of the pass. She was very quiet. The snow had started to fall in earnest now, thick, fat flakes that caught on the windshield and slid sideways in the wipers. May, he said, I'm here. What is the number? 247. Her voice was so thin he had to lean in to hear it. 247 Maple Street, blue house, corner lot. You remembered. Garrett, I have remembered that number every day for 7 years. Padre's voice came over the radio low. Tank, we are coming up on Maple. Tank's voice answered. Slow it down, brother, slow it down. We don't roll up on his house like an invasion. We come up easy. The convoy slowed. The engines, which had been thunder all day, dropped to a soft growl that you felt in your chest more than you heard. 15 Harleys at idle in a column moving down a quiet suburban street in a small Montana town in the last gray light of a winter afternoon. People stopped on the sidewalk. A woman walking a dog froze in mid-step. A curtain pulled back in a front window across the street. A man in a barn jacket who had been shoveling his driveway stopped shoveling and stood holding the shovel and watched. There, May said. Her free hand came up and pointed, and her finger was shaking. Garrett, there it is. The blue house was on the corner. A child's bicycle lay on its side in the front yard, half buried in fresh snow. A string of Christmas lights still hung along the eaves, unplugged, the bulbs frosted. A porch with 2 old wooden chairs. A welcome mat. A wreath on the door that should have been taken down a month ago. The convoy stopped at the curb. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Tank cut his engine. One by one behind him, the other engines died. The street went silent except for the sound of the snow falling on metal. Padre opened his door. He came around to the side of the van. He opened Garrett's door. He looked in. Sir, he said. When you're ready. Garrett looked at his wife. May, he said. I'm walking Garrett. I'm walking up that walk on my own feet. Do not let any of them carry me. Do not let you carry me. Do you understand me, Garrett Holloway? Yes, ma'am. He climbed down. He turned and held out his hands. She put hers in his. He took her weight gently, and she came down out of the van, and she stood up in the falling snow on the curb of Maple Street and looked up at her son's house, and she breathed. Tank had stepped down off his bike. He came over. He did not say anything. He just stood at May's other side close enough that if her knees went, he would catch her without making a show of it. Behind them, the brothers stood in a loose line by their machines. They had taken off their helmets. Diesel was holding his against his chest with both hands. Razor was standing very straight. Padre had folded his hands in front of him. Garrett Holloway and May Holloway began to walk up the path to the door of their son's house. It was not a long walk. It was maybe 20 feet of shoveled concrete and 3 porch steps. It took them 2 minutes. May stopped twice. The first time Garrett thought her body was going to give out. The second time he understood she was just looking at the house, taking it in, the siding, the wreath, the mailbox with the name Holloway painted on it in someone else's handwriting. Bennett did the mailbox, she whispered. Yes. He always had nice handwriting. He did. They went up the steps. Garrett held her elbow. The wood under their feet was old, painted gray. The paint was worn through where children's shoes had crossed it 10,000 times. They came to the door. Garrett raised his hand to knock. His hand did not knock. It hung there in the air in front of the door, and it shook and it would not come forward. And he stood on his son's porch on the worst and best day of his life and did not knock. May, he whispered. May, I can't. What if he won't? What if he... She did not say anything. She did not try to talk him through it. She did not try to be brave for him. She had been brave for 52 years, and she did not have to be brave anymore because she was the one who was going to die, and so she got to be the one who was scared. She reached past him with her thin hand, and she knocked on her son's door. 3 soft, even knocks, the way a mother knocks. For a long second, there was nothing. Then footsteps, a latch turning, the deadbolt sliding back, hinges creaking. The door opened. Bennett Holloway stood in the doorway. He was 45 years old. He had gone gray at the temples. He had his father's jaw and his mother's eyes. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans and white socks and no shoes. He had a kitchen towel over his shoulder. He smelled faintly of soap and coffee and something cooking on a stove. He looked at his mother. He looked at his father. He looked past them down the walk at the 15 Hells Angels standing in his street. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. For a full 10 seconds, no one on that porch moved. The snow fell. The wreath on the door tilted slightly in the wind. A car passed 2 streets over. Then Bennett's face moved the way a face moves when the wall behind it has been holding too much for too long, and the wall has finally in 1 second given way. Mom. It was not a word. It was a sound. Dad. His voice broke on the second word. He took 1 step forward, and then he stopped, and the look on his face was the look of a man who did not know if he was allowed to move toward them, did not know if he had the right, did not know what the rules were anymore after 7 years of silence. Garrett Holloway, 78 years old, retired Sergeant First Class United States Army veteran of Operation Desert Storm. The man who had once carried a dead boy 9 miles through a desert that killed armies lowered himself to his knees on his son's porch. It took him a long time to get down. His left knee did not bend right. His back did not bend right. He put one hand on the door frame to steady himself, and he went down slowly until both his knees were on the painted wood of the porch where his grandson had played. He looked up at his son. "Bennett," he said. "Dad, Dad, get up, Dad." "Bennett, I am going to say this, and then you can do what you want with us. You can close this door. You can call the police. You can stand there and hate me. I came a long way to say this, and I am going to say it. Dad, I was wrong." Bennett's hand came up to his mouth. "I was wrong, son. I was wrong about Marlena. I was wrong about you. I was wrong to call you what I called you. I was wrong to choose her over you. You came to me with the truth in your hand, and I called my son a coward to his face. And there is no day in the last 7 years that I have not heard the sound of my own voice saying it. There is no night I have laid down in bed and not heard it. I have written you 84 letters, son. I have not written them so you would write back. I wrote them so I could put it down somewhere, so I could say it. I wrote them because I could not find the courage to come to this door." He stopped. He drew a breath. It came in jagged. "Your mother is dying, the son. She has weeks, maybe days. I did not bring her here to ask you to forgive me. I do not deserve that, and I am not going to ask for it. I brought her here because she has one thing left in this world she wants, and that is to hold your boy, to hold Owen, one time before she goes. I will leave this porch the second you tell me to leave it. I will get back in that van. I will not bother you again as long as I live. But I am asking you, son, please let your mother see her grandson. Please, anything else in the world you decide about us after that, I will accept. I will accept it. I will not argue. I will not write again. I will not come back. But please, son, please, let her see him." He stopped. He put his forehead down onto the painted wood of the porch. "I am sorry, Bennett. I am so sorry." The snow fell. Bennett Holloway stood in the doorway of his own house and looked down at the white head of his father bent over the boards he had repainted himself the summer Owen turned 2. He did not say a word. He turned and he walked back into the house. The door stayed open. May, standing above Garrett, swayed once. Tank's hand, which had been hovering an inch from her elbow, closed on it. "I've got you, ma'am." "He's gone, Roy." "He's not gone. He went inside. He didn't close the door, May. He left the door open. He's coming back. Hold on." Garrett did not look up. His forehead stayed on the porch. Inside the house, footsteps moved. A drawer opened. A drawer closed. Footsteps came back. Bennett came back to the door. He was holding a wooden box. It was a plain box dovetailed at the corners about the size of a Bible. The wood was dark with age. The lid had a brass hasp. He stood in the doorway holding it for a moment. Then he stepped out onto the porch and he sat down on the top step right next to where his father was kneeling. He put the box on his knees. He opened it. It was full of envelopes. Garrett Holloway, who had not lifted his head, lifted his head. He looked at the box. He looked at his son. The envelopes inside were arranged carefully. They were not crumpled. They were not torn. Some of them were yellowed at the edges. Some of them were newer. They were stacked in rough order by year. Across the front of the top envelope, in Garrett's own handwriting, was Bennett's address in Silver Ridge, Montana. Bennett picked up the top envelope. He turned it over in his hands. The seal was broken. It had been opened. He picked up another. 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 Every single one. 84 envelopes. Every single one of them opened. "Dad," Bennett said. His voice was raw. "I read them. I read every one of them. I read them the day they came. I read them again at night. I read them again on Christmas. I read them again on Mom's birthday. I read them again on yours." Garrett's mouth opened. "I never sent one back," Bennett said. "I never picked up the phone. I never wrote. Because every time I tried, every time I sat down to write, I would think, what if I write and he doesn't write back? What if I call and he doesn't pick up? I had already lost you once. I could not lose you a second time. So I would sit at the kitchen table with the pen in my hand, and I could not. I could not, Dad." He reached behind him into the box. From underneath the envelopes from Garrett, he pulled out another stack, a thicker one. These envelopes were not addressed. They were sealed but not stamped. There were dozens of them. He set the stack down on top of the others. "These are mine," he said. Garrett looked at the stack. "I wrote you every month too," Bennett said. "I wrote you 63 times. I have not mailed one of them. Every time I would seal one and put a stamp on it, I would think, what if? What if he is not at the address? What if he has moved? What if he has died and I don't know it? What if I send it and it gets sent back and I see his name in my own mailbox and I have to face the fact that I never made the call?" His voice broke. "So I just put them in the box. I wrote to my father for 7 years, and I never put them in a mailbox." Garrett, on his knees, reached out one shaking hand and took the stack of his son's letters. He held them on his palms. He looked at the top one. Across the front of it, in Bennett's handwriting, were the words, "Dad, September, the year of Owen's birth." "Bennett, I want to read you the first one, Dad. I want to read you the first one I ever wrote and never sent." He took the envelope out of his father's hands. He opened it. He took out the letter. He unfolded it. His hand was shaking. He held it up to the gray light. "Dad," he read, "I am not mad at you for not believing me. I am mad at you for not being there. I needed you, and I called for you, and you weren't there." The hardest part of all of this was not that Marlena left. The hardest part was that when I came to you, you turned away. I have always been your son. I was your son when I was right, and I was your son when I was wrong, and I am your son now. I do not know if I will ever send this letter. I do not know if I will ever pick up the phone. But I want you to know, in case I never do that, I never stopped being your son. I just got too tired to ask you to be my father." Bennett stopped reading. He folded the letter back up. His hands were shaking too hard to put it back in the envelope. He just held it. He looked at his father. His face was wet. "Dad, I never stopped. I never stopped being your son." Garrett Holloway, on his knees on the porch of his son's house in front of 15 Hells Angels, and his dying wife, did something he had not done since he was 19 years old, and his mother had died in his arms. He reached up. He pulled his 45-year-old son down into his arms. Bennett, the box of letters tipping off his lap onto the porch, and spilling envelopes across the wood, came down off the step and into his father's arms. And the two of them, the old man and the gray-templed man, held each other on the porch of a blue house on Maple Street, and Bennett Holloway, who had not cried in front of his father since he was 11 years old, put his face in his father's neck and wept into the collar of his coat. "I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry." "I know, Dad. I know." Behind them, May Holloway stood with one hand on Tank's arm and watched the two men she loved most in the world hold each other for the first time in 7 years. And her face was very still and very peaceful. And she looked like a woman who had been carrying something for a long time and was finally being allowed to set it down. Out on the street, 15 men in leather jackets stood beside their motorcycles in the falling snow and did not move and did not speak. Diesel had his face in his hands. Wrench was staring at the sky. Razor was looking at the porch, his jaw set hard, and there were tears moving down through the stubble of his cheek, and he did not wipe them away. After a long time, Garrett looked up. May was still standing there, holding Tank's arm, smiling. "May," he said. "Garrett. Come here, honey. Come here. Bennett, look at your mother. Look at her." Bennett turned. He saw his mother for the first time in 7 years. He saw what the cancer had done. He saw how much of her was already gone. His face crumbled all the way through. "Mom?" He stood up. He walked to her 3 steps, and he took her in his arms, and he was so much bigger than she was that he had to bend down to do it. And he was careful the way you are careful with something precious that has been broken and glued back together. And he held her, and May Holloway, whose body weighed less than 100 pounds, now put both her hands on the back of her son's head and closed her eyes. "My baby," she whispered. "Mom, I'm sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart." There is, I should have." "Bennett, Bennett, look at me. Look at me, son. There is nothing to be sorry for. You are my boy. You have always been my boy. I am here. Your father is here. I'm here." He looked at her. She put her hand on his face, her thin, thin hand on her son's gray stubbled cheek. "Sweetheart," she said, "where is Owen?" Bennett turned. He looked back into the house. "Owen!" he called, and his voice was wet and strange. "Owen, buddy, come here. Come to the door." A small voice answered from somewhere inside. A 4-year-old voice. "Daddy Who is at the door." "Buddy, come here. Come on, just come here." Small feet on hardwood, small feet running. Owen Holloway, 4 years old, dark hair like his father's blue eyes, like his grandmother's, came around the corner of the hall in his pajamas. He was holding a small plastic dinosaur in one hand. He saw his father in the doorway. He saw the old man on the porch. He saw the old woman standing on the walk. He saw the line of motorcycles in the street. He stopped. His eyes got very big. He looked at May for a long second. His head tilted the way a small child tilts its head. "Daddy," he said. He was whispering, "Daddy, is that her? Is that her from the picture on top of the piano?" Bennett's hand came up over his mouth. "Yeah, buddy, that's her." Owen Holloway walked across the porch. He did not run. He walked the way a small boy walks towards something he has been told about, but has never seen, the way a small boy approaches a deer in the yard. Carefully, with his eyes very wide. He stopped 2 feet in front of May Holloway. He looked up at her. She bent down. She got down very slowly on her knees on the porch in front of him, and Garrett, who had come up to standing again, reached out his hand to catch her if she fell, but she did not fall. She knelt on the porch in front of her grandson, and she put both her thin hands on either side of his small face, and she looked at him, and he looked at her. "Hello, Owen," she whispered. "Hi. My name is May. I am your grandma." "I know," he said. "Daddy showed me your picture. He showed me when I was 3 and when I was 4. He said you smiled a lot." "Did he?" "He said you used to sing me songs when I was a baby on the phone, but I was too little to remember. He said you said my name a lot. He said you said it every day." May could not speak. Owen Holloway, 4 years old, in his pajamas on the porch of a blue house in Silver Ridge, Montana, took 2 more steps forward and put his small arms around his grandmother's neck. "I waited for you," he said. May Holloway pulled her grandson into her arms. She held him. She had crossed 95 miles of frozen Montana mountain in a blizzard with a heart that had stopped twice on the way, and she had come 95 miles across snow and rock and law and 7 years of silence, and she had come for this. She held him. She put her face into the top of his head, and she breathed in the smell of him, the warm soap and child smell of him, and she rocked him very gently back and forth, and she said his name very softly, the way she had said it every day for 4 years, in an empty kitchen in Pine Creek with a photograph on the wall. Owen, my Owen. Garrett Holloway stood above his wife and his grandson on the porch of his son's house, and he looked up at the sky, which was full of falling snow, and he closed his eyes and he said in his own private voice, in his own private place, to whoever was listening, "Thank you." The storm hit Silver Ridge hard that night. By 8 in the evening, the roads out of town were closed. By midnight, the power had gone. By morning, the snow was 3 feet deep against the side of the house, and the only sound on Maple Street was the wind and the soft hum of generators. The brothers slept on the floor. Bennett had told them they were not going anywhere, that he would not let them, that the storm would kill them on the pass. He had brought down every blanket and quilt in the house. He had pulled the cushions off the couches and the chairs. He had built a kind of rough barracks across the living room floor, and 15 men in leather jackets had sat in his living room and eaten the chili that Padre had made on the gas stove and not spoken much. For 3 days, the storm held them. For 3 days, a family that had been broken for 7 years sat together in candlelight. Garrett told Bennett the things he should have told him a long time ago. About Marlena, about what he had been thinking, about why he had been wrong, about the shape of his own fear when his son's marriage was falling apart, and how he had grabbed onto the wrong thing because he had not known what else to grab. Bennett told Garrett the things he had needed to say, about the long nights after Marlena left, about the year he had not been able to look at a phone, about the first time Owen had asked him what his grandparents looked like, and how he had pulled an old photograph out of a drawer and shown his son 2 faces he had not seen in person in 6 years. May sat between them on the couch and held one of each of their hands. On the second night, Garrett went out onto the back porch with Bennett, and the two of them stood in the cold under the kitchen light, and Garrett told his son about the diagnosis, about the 8 months, about the doctor, about what was coming. Bennett, who had just gotten his father back, lowered his head and cried in a way he had not cried since he was a child. Dad, no, you just... Son, Dad, listen to me. I have a year, maybe a little less. I am going to give you that year. I am going to give it to you and to Owen. I am going to be on this porch every Sunday until I cannot stand on this porch. I am going to be at every school play. I am going to be at every birthday. I am going to be the grandfather I was not going to get to be. Your mother gave me this. Your mother got me to your door. Your mother brought me back to my son. I am not wasting 1 minute of what is left. Bennett pulled his father into his arms. He held him a long time. On the 3rd evening, May told them it was time. She did not say it in those words. She did not have to. Garrett knew it the way he had known it for weeks, the way a man knows things about a woman he has loved for 52 years. The color of her skin, the way her eyes had gone past tired into something quieter, the way her hand, when he picked it up, no longer quite closed around his. She asked them to bring her to the couch in the living room, the one closest to the fireplace, the one where she had held Owen for the first time 3 days ago. She asked Bennett to make tea. She asked Garrett to sit beside her. She asked Tank to come stand by the fire. She asked all the brothers to come into the room. They came, 15 of them. They came in quietly the way men come into a church. They stood along the walls. They held their hands in front of them. Diesel was holding his helmet. Razor was standing very straight. Owen was on the floor at her feet, in his pajamas, leaning against her shin. She had her thin fingers in his hair. She looked around the room. "My friends," she said. Her voice was so quiet they had to lean in. "My friends, I would like to say a few things. I do not have very long, so I am going to say them now." She looked at Tank. "Roy Brennan." "Yes, ma'am." "You opened your door for us." "Yes, ma'am." "On the worst night of our lives, when no one else would, you opened it. I do not have words for what that is. I want you to know that I have prayed for you every night since. I will pray for you tonight. I will pray for you tomorrow wherever I am." Tank's eyes closed. "Yes, ma'am." "Roy, I want you to do one thing for me. After, will you do it?" "Anything, ma'am." "Go to your mother's grave." He nodded once, he could not speak. "And tell her you are sorry, and tell her you love her, and tell her I sent you." "Yes, ma'am." She looked at Razor. "Wade." "Yes, ma'am." "You sat in the snow with my husband when his legs went. You picked him up. You called him sir. You did for him what a son does." "Mrs. Holloway, you are a good man, Wade Calloway. You came from a man who did not stay. You are not him. Do you hear me? You are not him." Razor's mouth worked. He could not get a word out. She looked at Diesel, at Wrench, at Padre, at all of them. She said something small to each of them. Each man's face changed when she said her piece to him. She had a thing to say to each of them. She had been thinking about it for 3 days. When she was done, she looked at her son. "Bennett, Mom, sweetheart, come here. Come here, baby." He came, he knelt beside the couch. She put her hand on his face. "You were the best thing I ever did, Bennett Holloway. You were the best thing your father and I ever did. Do not forget that. Do not let yourself forget that. You hear me. You were the best of us. Mom, and you take care of your father. He is going to need you. He is sicker than he is telling you." She looked at Garrett. "Garrett?" He could not look at her. "Garrett, my love, look at me." He looked at her. "I know," she said. "I have known for a while. I have known since the day you sat on the porch with the doctor's letter and folded it up and put it in your back pocket and thought I did not see you do it. I have known, Garrett, and I have loved you for not telling me because I know why you didn't tell me, and you did it the same reason you have done everything for 52 years, which is because you love me too much. But I am telling you now, my love." She turned to Bennett. "Your father has a year, maybe less. You will need to take care of him, sweetheart. You will need to bring him here. You will need to put him in a room in your house. You will need to be the son to him that he tried to be to you and could not always be and is sorry for. Will you do that for me, Bennett?" "Yes, Mom. Promise." "I promise, Mom. I promise." She looked back at Garrett. She smiled. "All right," she whispered. She reached down. She put her hand on top of Owen's head. He looked up at her. He was very serious. 4 years old and serious as a man. "Owen, baby, I want you to know something. Okay? I am going to go to sleep in a minute, and I am going to sleep for a long time, and you are not going to see me here anymore, baby. But I want you to know that I am not gone. I am going to be with you. I am going to be in your daddy's voice when he reads to you. I am going to be in your grandpa's eyes when he looks at you. I am going to be in the wind that you hear outside your window. Do you understand? Are you going to be in the sky? Yes, yes, baby, I will be in the sky. Like Grandma Susan's mom. Yes. Okay." He leaned forward and put his small arms around her thin neck. He held her. She held him. "I love you, Owen Holloway. I love you too, Grandma May." She held him a long time. When she let him go, she looked at Garrett. "Honey, I'm here, May. I'm tired, honey. I know. Will you hold me?" "Yes, May. Yes, my love." He climbed up onto the couch beside her. He put one arm under her shoulders. He pulled her against his chest. Bennett took her hand. Owen curled up at her feet again. The brothers stood along the walls. May Holloway looked up at her husband. "Garrett." "Yes. It was a good life. It was the best life, May." "Tell me again." "It was the best life. You were the best of it. There was not one day of it I would change. Not one." She smiled. She turned her face into his chest. She closed her eyes. The fire moved on the walls. After a while, the room was very quiet. Tank Brennan, 52 years old, 6'4", the president of the Pine Creek chapter of the Hells Angels, lowered his head in the corner of the living room of a blue house on Maple Street in Silver Ridge, Montana, and the firelight moved across his silver beard, and May Holloway in her husband's arms went home. The funeral was on a Saturday. The church in Silver Ridge held 120. 300 people came. They stood in the aisles. They stood at the back. They stood on the steps. They stood in the parking lot. At the front in a single row of pews along the right side of the church, 15 men in their best leather sat very still. They had braided their beards. They had polished their boots. They had cleaned their cuts. They sat the way men sit in a church when they have come to honor someone, and the rest of the church, the people of Silver Ridge, the neighbors, the school teachers, the friends of Bennett's, looked at them and understood for the first time who these men were. Bennett gave the eulogy. He told the town about a woman who had walked 12 miles in a blizzard to get to her grandson. He told them about a husband who had carried her on his back. He told them about 15 Hell's Angels who had opened a door at midnight and changed his family forever. He told them about a son who had been too proud and too afraid for too long, and a mother who had given him back his father in the last week of her life. He took 15 small wooden crosses out of his coat pocket. He had carved them during the 3 nights of the storm. He walked down the aisle of the church. He went to each of the brothers in turn. He bent down. He put a cross around each man's neck. Garrett Holloway sat in the front pew with his 4-year-old grandson on his lap. He held Owen all the way through the service. The little boy did not cry. He just held his grandfather's hand. Garrett stood with Bennett's hand at his elbow and walked to the front of the church. He spoke for 2 minutes. He said he had survived a war by accident. He said he had survived a marriage by grace. He said he had survived a son's silence by writing letters. He said he was going to keep going now for as long as he had for his boy and his grandson, and the brothers who had ridden 95 miles for a woman they did not know. He said he had been wrong about a lot of things in his life. He said the thing he had been most wrong about, the thing he was here to confess, was the day he had looked at men in leather and decided he knew who they were. He said he was going to spend the time he had left teaching his grandson the opposite of that. The brothers in their pew did not move, but all 15 of them, everyone had their eyes wet. 6 months later, Tank Brennan rode alone down a long, flat road in Nevada and pulled up at the gate of a small cemetery on the edge of a town he had not been to in many years. He killed his engine. He took his helmet off. He held the wooden cross in his hand, the one Bennett had carved for him, and he walked the 3 rows of headstones until he found hers. He stood in front of it for a long time. Then he got down on his knees in the dust. "Mama," he said, and he stayed there on his knees for almost an hour. 1 year later, in a small kitchen in Silver Ridge, Montana, Garrett Holloway sat at a table with his grandson and helped him spell out letters with cereal pieces. The kitchen smelled of coffee. Bennett was at the stove. The morning light came in low through the window. Garrett's hand shook when he reached for his cup. He had been getting more tired. The doctor in town had been kind. Bennett had set up a room downstairs so his father did not have to climb. Garrett did not climb anymore. But every Sunday he sat at this table. Every Sunday he ate breakfast with his son and his grandson. Every Sunday, when the weather allowed, 15 Harleys turned onto Maple Street and rolled to a stop at the curb, and the brothers came inside, and the kitchen filled with leather and laughter. And Owen, who was 5 years old, now climbed all over Diesel and made Razor read him books and held Tank's hand while Tank fixed the squeaky hinge on the back door. The chapter had a new ride. They called it Maze Ride. The first Saturday of every month, no matter the weather, 15 Hell's Angels rolled out of Pine Creek on behalf of someone who needed something. A widow, a veteran in a wheelchair, a grandmother trying to get to a funeral, a boy whose father could not be found. They did not charge. They did not put it on the news. They did not want their pictures taken. They went where they were needed, and they helped, and they went home. 18 months after May Garrett Holloway died quietly in his bed in the room downstairs at his son's house. Bennett was holding one of his hands. Owen, who was 5.5 by then, was holding the other. The brothers came that night. They stood around the bed. They prayed in the rough, ragged way that men like them pray. Garrett was buried next to May in a cemetery on a hill outside Silver Ridge. There is a flag on his grave. There is a small wooden cross on hers. Owen brings flowers there on her birthday every year. Bennett brings him. Sometimes on a Saturday afternoon, Owen sits at the kitchen table and listens to his father tell him stories. About a winter night, about a blue house, about a wreath that did not get taken down in time. About 15 men on motorcycles who came up out of a snowstorm with his grandmother in a van. About a sergeant first class who walked out of the desert alive and walked back into his son's life all those years later. About a brother named Henry who had a scar on his left cheek from a peach tree. Owen Holloway, who is older now, who plays baseball and reads books and goes to a school where his teachers do not know what his grandfather did, keeps a small wooden cross in his desk drawer. He does not show it to many people, but sometimes late at night he holds it in his hand, and sometimes in his head he hears an old voice. A voice he barely remembers and remembers exactly. A voice that says his name softly, the way only a grandmother says a name. There is a plaque on the wall of the Wolf's Den in Pine Creek, Montana. It is dark wood. It is hand-carved. It hangs above the fireplace where May Holloway slept on her first night in a Hells Angels clubhouse. It reads, in memory of May Holloway. She asked for shelter. She gave us purpose. Below the plaque, sealed in a small glass case, is a silver star. It is the only one in the room. Below the silver star on a brass plate is a single line. Garrett Holloway, Sergeant First Class, United States Army. He opened a door he was afraid to knock on. So can we. And on the first Saturday of every month, no matter the weather, 15 Harley-Davidsons start up in the lot. Their engines roll out onto the Highway 15 across the gray. And somewhere up above, an old woman with bright eyes and a stubborn heart smiles and watches them go. Her angels, doing just fine.